Okay, hello, people of YouTube land. Those that are in the Cringe Crew community Discord. If you're not, you should totally join that. It's a really nice, place. Uh, Also, hello to those that follow Ted and I on Twitch, and those that are listening to this on whatever audio streaming site that this podcast gets uploaded. I am Traductus,
And I'm Ted.
and this is the Cringe Crew Gaming Movie Review Podcast, where we take a director's filmography and we go through it and we talk about it and we rank it. um We are on to Kubrick, and we've seen quite a few Kubrick films. With the last one being really good, and the previous two ones not so much. But we got to, I think, what is widely considered the one where, his breakout directorial, which that is being the 1957 anti-war film Paths of Glory. Now, obviously directed by Stanley Kubrick, this is based on the 35 novel by Humphrey Cobb. Cobb is known for Paths of Glory, but he also wrote he was also the lead screenwriter on the 1937 film San Quentin, starring Humphrey Bogart. Actually, Bogart. I always keep saying Bogart for whatever reason, but it's Bogart. Gosh, that's a name that you don't normally hear a lot as a first name is Humphrey. That really kind of dates, dates the acting period that we're in. But before I get off into tangent and stuff,
Before?
Before I get into a long tangent, let's just say that, all right? Released, November 1st, 1957 in Munich, and December 20th, 1957 in the United States. Had a budget of $900,000 and made a box office return of $1.2 million. This movie is starring Kirk Douglas, which Kirk Douglas is the father of actor Michael Douglas, and Michael Douglas is let's just say to Ted and I'm not sure about people that are in their teens or not. But typically Michael Douglas is regarded as a very famous actor. Same with Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was actually rather famous during his time as well. But it's crazy how much they look alike. This is like a really young Kirk Douglas, and he looked with this film being in black and white, you can definitely see the fucking resemblance between him and his son in this. But anyway, he is Colonel Drax, a commanding officer of the 701st Infantry Regiment, and is the defense for a trio of officers that are being court-martialed. We have Ralph Beaker as Corporal Philippe Paris of the 71st Infantry. I believe he's one of I believe he's one of the ones that are being tried. We have Adolphe Jean Menu. He is plays Major General George Brolard, the Corps Commander, as in the to describe this to Ted so he knows who the hell I'm talking about, the dude that's in the chair that frickin' basically is actually at fault with everything by convincing the suicide frickin' mission to happen.
Okay.
But obviously doesn't get shit because he's that high up in the military. We had George McCready as Brigadier General Paul Moreau, the guy that is leading the suicide attack and calls upon the court-martial when it fails. We have Lieutenant Rougeau, Company Commander, 701st Infantry. That is played by Wayne Morris, who is known for his role in The Bushwhackers and the title role of Kid Galahad. He was also a decorated World War II ace fighter pilot. He's the one that throws his friend under the bus after he fucks up while going on a scouting mission. We have see, I'm gonna try to skip through a lot of these so that way we actually get to the main fucking people here, like the trio. Joe Turkel, Private Pierre Armand. He's the one that gets court-martialed due to being drawn lots. And then we also have a returning actor with Timothy Carey as Private Maurice Farrell. He's the one that is got the full beard, and he also played the racist dude that gets fucking shot in the last movie that we watched. And what's rather interesting, God, that's so many uhs. The German singer in this movie at the end of the film is played by Christiane Kubrick, who is the wife of Stanley Kubrick. She actually was his wife from 1958 till his death in 1999. For the development, Kubrick said his decision to make his war film was one of the attractions of a war or crime story is that it provides an almost unique opportunity to contrast an individual or our contemporary society with a solid framework of accepted value, which the audience becomes fully aware of, and which can be used as a counterpoint to a human individual to a human individual emotional situation. Further, war acts as a kind of a hothouse for force, quick breeding of attitudes and feelings. Attitudes crystallize and come out into the open. Conflict is natural when it would, in a less critical situation, would have to be introduced as almost as a contrivance and would thus appear forced or even worse, false. Now, he was able to direct this film because despite The Killing being a box office bomb, it managed to land on several critical top 10 lists of the year, so therefore United Artists and also MGM decided to have Kubrick developed stories from MGM slush piles of scripts of purchased novels. So that's how. So Kubrick, ended up picking that. They also ended up casting Kirk Douglas as he was impressed with the script, and he also managed to get an advance of $1 million budget from United Artists to help produce the movie.
Okay.
And I think with that, we will get into the summary.
Sure. So this one was a little bit...
By the way, this is a World War I movie.
Okay, so this was a little bit more.
I figured I'd specify that. Sorry.
Every time I start to fucking talk, Jesus Christ! All right, so I hate it here. So this movie was a little bit more convoluted than the past few plots that we've seen. Essentially, we start out with a man being offered a promotion if he agrees to go into this unadvisable combat in the war. As you get into the scene with the war, it's very clear that they're losing. His men are dying. He decides to attack them with his own artillery to force them to push forward into what is more than likely their own death. Obviously, the men retreat, save themselves. The man who led them into combat then wants to try them for treason. Obviously, the jury is pretty rigged because everything's a show and it is what it is. This man eventually ends up getting tried for treason for attacking his own soldiers, to then be replaced, or the replacement is offered by the same man saying that, oh, you only wanted him fired to get this promotion. And yeah, it insinuates a vicious cycle. Yeah, that's about it for plot. Little more convoluted, but we get there in the end.
Yeah. It's just a lot of shitty people just trying.
It's shitty people doing shitty things and blaming somebody else.
And Kirk Douglas basically pointed it out to everybody.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, well, you want to start with likes? Because I think my list is actually going to be pretty long here.
For likes or dislikes?
My likes are going to be pretty long.
So we're actually going with likes as opposed to dislikes first. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. This movie's fucking fantastic. I think it's, for the most part, very, very well acted. Especially compared to what we've seen with the last three movies. With the exception, there is one exception, which we will get to in dislikes, because I know Ted's gonna bring it up, and I have a feeling Ted's cringed at me about acting because, let's just say this is the most American, British-sounding French people that we've ever.
Yeah, they're pretending to be French, and not one of them has a lick of fucking French in them. It doesn't it's something to be like, what the hell about, but I'm not actually upset. Like, I don't think it detracted from the movie necessarily.
But, I think that Christ, I really think that even though we didn't really go that much in depth with the plot, and even though it's kind of convoluted, sort of, it's a very well told story. If you kind of get what I'm saying on that. I know other people aren't. It's kind of hard to describe. I
would agree. They do a very good job at getting you from A to B. Like, it's not a straightforward story, but they do a very good job at making it happen in a very procedural way.
I also like how they make you actually care about the characters that are in this, because you have basically three people that are being thrown under the fucking bus for various reasons. Like, one dude's gotten drawn lots. The other one's basically getting thrown under the bus by his, former friend and commanding officer because his commanding officer fucked up. And then you have another dude that's like, yeah, my regiment just doesn't like me. So
yeah, to that point, as far as like caring about characters, right? I mean, I know we like the killing a lot, but it feels like there was decades worth of experience from the storytelling, from the killing into Paths of Glory. This was so well done. You cared about the characters. Like, I have cinematography notes that aren't necessarily good, but it didn't even feel like it was, like they do a whole lot in modern movies, at least with camera angles and lighting to make you feel certain emotions towards certain characters. And I didn't even notice those elements. Like, I think just the storytelling was so good that you did put investment, especially into the men who were tried. And maybe even a little vitriol against the commanding officer who was a dickhead.
And even the commanding officer that was like a fucking dickhead, like you could even tell, like, he's You actually even kind of feel bad for it because you understand why he did what he did, but then he's just like, obviously he kind of gets his a little bit at the end because he has to uh do head the firing squad, and he doesn't want to at all. And when you can totally tell, like, he kind of has a little bit of a fate worse than death because he knows it should be him that's there instead of his friend. Um, Another thing I have to say, when you brought up cinematography, I think there's quite a few scenes of cinematography in this that are very well done. Especially like the scenes in the battle, it's because a lot of like modern like war movies, things are very hectic and you can't really follow what's going on. With this movie and the battle scenes, you can easily follow what's going on. It's especially since like you're mainly just following like one character, which ends up being like Kirk Douglas, who's basically by sheer dumb luck able to get pretty far up the front line before he like turns back. But you just see him just basically seeing like this battle happening around him while he's trying to lead his troops up front, and it's like you see like you can easily pick out various moments of like different soldiers of like having like different formations of trying to like keep cover and going forward, and then unfortunately like there's one sort of mistake or something or some sheer dumb luck where they like move up too early, then boom, they're down, and or they like move too late, or uh it's
easy to follow.
yeah,
Like,
it's
absolutely
easy to follow, but it's also hectic at the same time, and it's a weird balance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, hard for me to disagree. I also think that, like, I think I mentioned it a few weeks ago. I'd kind of fallen off of it, but the movies that I was familiar with Kubrick, like, they all had some sort of like underlying theme, like a more profound, less shitty way of the end of the first two seasons of South Park, where they're always like, well, what did we learn today, right? That's basically what you get out of a Kubrick movie. And I guess this one, like, it just had so many different things, right? That, like, there was obviously, like, right on surface level, it was anti-war, right? But there were also like failures of institution, failures in the legal system. There was hints at misogyny. There was like people's own hubris or self-awareness, or like the limitations of human free will. I remember there was a scientific study that I had read, which basically like explored the guilt for like Nazi officers, right? Were they actually inhumane, or were they just following orders? Like, and it was a giant piece about, I won't get into it, but essentially this kind of worked in the same way for me, right? Like, are they treasonous for having their own free will to walk away from the battle and save their own lives? Are they, is the general asshole, like, is he following orders that in order to do what's best for him, he needs to blindly follow this orders, or is he an asshole because like he's sentencing his people to certain death, right? Like there's a whole lot of like really big societal themes here, and man, we just hit the ground running. Like, Kubrick's just like, all right, how many different think pieces can I shove into 88 minutes?
And it's also, it's like you have like kind of multiple villains in this, because you have like the dickhead general that sends like everybody into like the suicide mission. And then you also, have the friend that sells out, his friend and has, him on fucking trial. And then overall, you got the overarching general who basically tricks like his own army general buddy into doing a suicide mission in order to have like the sham trial, so that way there's more of a morale boost for the troops, as in like if they don't push through like the stalemate in World War One, they're going to be charged for cowardice as well and shot.
Right. Well, and the different layers that, like, on every small little conflict, or basically every discussion that happens in this movie, right? That, like, there is somebody to be the victim and somebody to be the bad guy.
Like, it's crazy to think, like, I really want to talk about, like, the cinematography, how certain things were shot, how the lighting, because the lighting was pretty damn amazing in this movie.
For parts of it.
For parts of it, mainly in the jail cell, but like, all that really does get overshadowed with the story of how, like, in depth and layered it is. And I know that I know a lot of the Kubrick movies are novel adaptations, and I wonder why, like, these movies are starting to get really, really better is because he's adapting things from, like, a novel as opposed to, like, an original idea like the first two movies are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Do you have anything else for likes before I transition into cinematography and dislikes?
Kirk Douglas, unnecessary badass, and definitely also I like how he kind of also has a little bit of the role of, like, the audience in a sense, because a lot of things that he's thinking, the audience is thinking at the same time. And I just think he kind of does a hell of a good job in this. And quite a few movies that I've seen Kirk Douglas in, he's, like, okay, but he's not really like I haven't seen him in a movie where he actually got to act, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I think, like, since he was given that chance in this, I think he did a hell of a good job. I don't remember, because we're going to see Kirk Douglas again in Spartacus. I don't remember how well he does in Spartacus, but I'm really, looking forward to that. But that being said, we can move into dislikes.
So I want to start with the cinematography because there was a lot that was really frustrating. First, that you mentioned that the in the jail cell the lighting was good, and yeah, absolutely, like, I'll give you that. The lighting for like 90% of the rest of this movie was fucking terrible. Settings, locations, especially sound, awful. The trial. Okay, look, I will get there. I'm covering that caveat. Hold on a second. So it started at the beginning of the movie with the war scene, right? Where, like, it was very clearly, like, distorted digital sound. It was fucking abysmal. I said it at the time. I will say it again. I don't know how much of it was the movie and how much of it was Plex. I'm willing to give the movie the benefit of the doubt because of the way that the medium in which we watched it. However,
it was still pretty.
It was fucking gross. I'm done with that scene. I'm moving on to the future. When I was giving it the benefit of the doubt until the scene with the trial. So
the echo of everything.
They filmed it in this big, gigantic, echoey fucking room, added 2 pieces of wood fucking furniture, and then just decided to shout through this gigantic room with the heat and passion of a military rigged trial. Right? Every one syllable sounded like about 5, all overlapping each other, where you struggled to understand any of the words whatsoever.
I was getting Moonraker flashbacks out of that for how bad the sound was in those scenes in, like, Drax's mansion.
And what makes it even worse is that half the trial was asking the men to repeat the answers to their questions in a different fashion. So the dialogue was, "Here's why I didn't do it. Can you repeat that but answer the question? Here's why I didn't do it. Can you repeat the answer to the question or actually answer the question?" And just back and forth like that 5 times. So, hey, you didn't get it the first time, but he's gonna repeat it 7 more times because that's the dialogue for all 3 men. Ridiculous. I do kind of want to circle back to you said that, like, you thought the acting was pretty good. So there were some really profound lines in this, and there were some really like strong line deliveries. I think outside of Kirk Douglas, the acting was pretty piss poor, to be honest with you.
I don't know. I mean, I'd argue that the three people put on trial did pretty damn good job as well. Others, people around that, maybe not so much.
I would still argue, like, I think their line delivery was really good. I think the cadence of their voices was like, hey, they definitely knew their lines. They knew the tone at which they were presenting, but I don't think they sold me with their physical nature either. Like, if that had just been a transcript over the radio, I would have thought they did a really good job, but like to visually be able to see them, it was hard to buy in.
Yeah, and it's not like this isn't the early days of sound film cinema either, because like sound cinema's been around since 1920, before 1929. But like, let's just say like
it's been around long enough that you should be better at it.
Yeah,
and the ones that especially bothered me were the military leaders, right? Both the guy who starts the attack and is then later tried for treason, and the overall general. I don't know their actual ranks, which like would make this a whole lot easier, but I'm gonna fuck that up a lot. So the general is just big and bold and over the top, and everything I have to say is loud and impassioned, and it really just makes everything he says sound so fucking disingenuous. Like, you, even before you knew you couldn't trust him.
Point though.
You know, at the beginning, I get it, because very clearly he sells this whole plot line in motion by, like, you know, the encouragement of a promotion and sounding over the top, like a yes, sir, you can do it. But by the end of the movie, when his facade gets seen through, and even when he's angry, he's really, really impassioned about it. Like, it's just such a fucking shitty over dramatization of an already shitty, worthless character, right? I think the commanding officer, then we'll call him, like, the only time that his acting is something that's worth buying into is when he's yelling at the other soldiers to, like, actually fire the artillery at his own men. Like, that's the only time his acting is believable. And outside of that, it's just the cold, stone-faced, emotionless, like, he gets told he's also going to be investigated for like treason, and he's just, well, I never, without any real tone in his voice or without any facial appearance that he's upset. Like, a lot of this acting is just bad.
I do agree with that. Like, it, like, at first, like, you know, it's like, okay, it's obviously like a bullshitter, but when it gets like later and later, it is rather over the top, and it does take you out of it.
Again, I think the story was good enough that you can still watch this and have a positive experience even with that acting. Like, I mean, it's definitely not something that ruins the movie. Yeah, I want to be clear that, like, it was definitely something that was like, okay, this isn't great because these things, but also, like, this was pretty solid. I don't mean for my negatives to sound like a complete detraction. What else is on your dislikes list?
Well, I was actually gonna have sound. But I think I know it's kind of the point of the movie, but like, this movie's depressing as fuck. Like, it's not really like a negative or anything like that, because like, I'm fine with movies being depressing as fuck, but like, there isn't really any positive things that outcomes in this movie. Everything just gets bad and worse and worse and worse as it goes. Like,
and then you get rewarded with misogyny at the end. Like, now I'm with you on that.
Yeah, well, you get rewarded with like the misogyny thing at the end, but even the soldiers don't even have a good time, because like, they're getting sent right back to the front line to have that shit happen to them again. And it's like a really awful freaking cycle, which I think is definitely the point of the movie, is that, you know, like, here's like this vicious cycle and stupidity and absurdness of like war, but like
Yeah.
At the same time, you're just like, I at least want somebody to have like a decent ending to this, you know?
Yeah, I think that rips back into the whole like Kubrick's got a point, right? He's got a message. There's a lesson at the end, or there's a bigger societal point. And I mean, like, while anti-war was the big one, like I think that kind of goes down to what you're saying, that like war never ends, war is constant, right? Like I mean, you know, the whole like we need to end it because otherwise this dumb shit is going to continue to happen. You know, like I get it. I get it. It is the point, but you're right. It does feel kind of like, oh fuck, here we go again, right at the end of it.
Yeah, but at the same time, I also think the ending's a little dragged out, if that makes sense. Because like the whole, I know there's the point with the misogyny stuff at the end, but to me, it's like I think a lot of that could have been like cut and just had it like after the whole talk with like the one general and stuff like that. He's like, you know, the guy goes up to Kirk Douglas like, "Hey, we have to go to the front line." Like they could have just kind of ended to that. I think like the last 5 minutes of this movie could have just been.
Yeah, well, and they also did the last like 2 or 3 scenes in just a weird order.
Right.
They like everything up until that point was logical and made sense, and this one it probably happened like in a timeline chronologically, but to view it felt like the opposite order of the way that I cared about it. Like all 3 parts would have been more impactful in the correct order.
Because when he finds out about like the one general, like when Kirk Douglas finds out about the one general trying to fire on his own army, you think like, okay, he's gonna blackmail these people and then he's gonna get these people free. No, that's not what happens. It's just the general guy ends up getting fucked over. I mean, not fucked over, but ends up getting put to trial as well. The 3 people still get, spoiler alert, still get executed. And it's like,
yeah,
you know, it's just weird how that order happens in that way.
Well, and then the misogyny and the humming, and then the conversation about the upcoming trial and the offer, the promotion, and everything just happens in just a fucking ass backwards way, man. Goofy, but still, like I said, still solid. I still enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed this movie.
What you got for rankings? Where are you dropping this one?
Number 1.
Okay.
Number 1. I actually have to say this is actually a rather enjoyable movie that I've seen. Like one of the better war movies that I've actually have seen, just due to like how well done the story is and the context of everything. If that makes sense.
Sure.
Like, to me, this is almost similar to like A Few Good Men, but like earlier. If that makes sense.
Okay.
But with more at stake.
Okay. Interesting. Bizarre take, but I can respect
it's it. It's got like a military, like, you know, trial and everything, but like to me, I think there's like a lot more deeper meaning, and I actually do like A Few Good Men, but I think this movie has a lot more deeper meaning to it than that. So, but I don't know. It might be like how we were talking about, like, while you were into following so much, you wasn't sure. It's just because like you've never seen it before, so it was like, you know, it's new.
Fair.
And trust me, Paths of Glory is gonna go down the list when we get into like later into like Kubrick's career, like later than where we are now. That being said.
I think for me it's second. I still really enjoyed the Killing.
I mean, Killing's pretty damn good. It's
everybody loves the heist, close. Man. That one. I know I say that as a meme, but like it's kind of real, dude. It tickles my brain. Like I think it was really well written. Like everything was so intelligently layered. I really enjoyed The Killing, And while this one was really good, I think part of that whole like depressing, self-defeating, everything's wrong and we can't fix it because it's a vicious cycle really just kind of made me feel like at the end, you know, like I think and just for that I think it's going to sit below The Killing, but it's really close. Really, it could go either way, and I wouldn't feel disappointed in myself for it.
So you heard it this time, folks. All right. Completely depressing ending with it's a huge cycle is worse than seeing your money blow up in the air and while you get arrested you're just like, what difference does it make?
Yeah, capitalism's a lie anyway. Don't worry about it. All right. Well, with that, I think that wraps us up for this week. As always, you can check out the Discord, like Stallman mentioned quite a while ago now. God damn. This has been our longest one. Well, at least for Kubrick.
Yeah, for Kubrick.
Because boy, if we had longer. Anyway, like Stallman said a while ago, please check out the Discord. You can watch movies with us. We watch them on Tuesday evenings. Stallman usually posts a time. You may have to translate to your own time zone, but that sounds like a you problem, to be honest with you. And then, if you guys have ideas for future podcasts, be sure to check these out. We'll be posting these every single week. After Kubrick, we got some cool ideas planned. So you can check us both out through the Discord and also on Twitch. Stallman at Traductus, myself at Ted Green Eagles. And with that, we will see you here next week.
See ya.